Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing an Amorphage deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this one for you guys because this deck is an extremely interesting deck where all the monsters in it are actually floodgates, which is a really interesting concept. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like getting your name description in a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 2 copies of Goliath. Goliath is definitely a 2-of in the deck. This card is our main boss monster outside of our copies of Sloth, but this card is a really cool ability in the Pendulum Zone that while you control an Amorphage monster, any card it's sent to the graveyard is banished instead, except for Amorphage cards. And all of your Amorphage monsters share a common effect that when they're in the Pendulum Zone, once per turn during your stamina phase, tribute a monster or destroy this card. But when this card's on your side of the field as a monster, neither player can special summon monsters from the X deck except for Amorphage monsters, which is a really powerful effect. We then play 2 copies of Sloth. Sloth is amazing as a 2-of in the build because this card has a really cool floodgate effect that while you control an Amorphage monster, neither player can add cards from their deck to their hand except by drawing them, basically being a pendulum version of Mistake. This card also shares a similar effect to your copy of Goliath when it's in the monster zone, and neither player can special summon monsters from the X deck except Amorphage monsters. We then play 3 copies of Lechery. This card is really awesome because it basically is a floodgate for spell cards. That while you control an Amorphage monster, neither player can activate spell cards or their effects except for Amorphage cards, which is an absolutely crazy ability. This card also has the ability that this card is Pendulum Summon or flip face up. Neither player can special summon monsters from the X deck while this card is face up on the field except for Amorphages, which is such a powerful ability. We then play 3 copies of Gluttony. Gluttony is one of the most powerful cards in the entire deck, because this card has a crazy powerful pendulum effect that when you control an Amorphage monster, monsters cannot activate their effects except for Amorphage monsters, and that's anywhere. In the hand, on the field, anywhere, because it says that while you control an Amorphage monster, monsters cannot activate their effects, and it doesn't specify where, which is absolutely crazy. This card is definitely a 3-of in the build. The only downside of this card is it does have 0 attack points. We then play 2 copies of Pride. Pride is really cool just as a boss monster that you can just summon out to your side of the field, because when you have your copies of Infection on your side of the field, this card is absolutely massive. It starts out at 1750, but it gets really large really quickly with our spell cards. This card is a really cool ability when in the Pendulum Zone. While you control an Amorphage monster, neither player takes any effect damage, which is a really cool ability. We then play 2 copies of Wrath. Wrath is great in the deck just as a 2-of because we also play Ties of the Brethren in the deck, which is why we're just playing a few of the level 4s because we can easily get them out on our side of the field. This card has the ability while you control an Amorphage monster, neither player can tribute monsters except Amorphage monsters. We then play just a single copy of Envy. Envy is great as a 1-of just to play a different name in the deck, but while you control an Amorphage monster, neither player can activate cards or effects as Chainlink 2 or higher. We then play a single copy of Greed. Greed is also great in the deck as a 1-of, as this card actually negates trap effects while you control an Amorphage monster. We then also play 3 copies of Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon. Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon is basically a Rhoda for this deck, because this card has a crazy powerful effect that you can discard this card, pay 500 life points, and then add a level 8 or lower Dragon Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand, which all of your Amorphage monsters are Dragon Pendulum monsters. So this card is basically just a Rhoda for the deck by discarding it and paying 500. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Amorphage Persona. This card is really good as a 1-of in the deck because it does give us a little bit of a boost in attack points, and all Amorphage monsters on the field gain 300 attack and defense, and up to twice per turn, and if an Amorphage monster control is tributed, draw a card, which is a great effect to help us just dig into the deck. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Pot of Extravagance is great in the build as a 3-up, just to help us dig into the deck, because we really don't need the extra deck all that much in this deck. You're basically just summoning out your copy of Sloth or your copy of Goliath to basically just lock down the opponent and swing in for game with all of our Amorphage monsters by putting them in the Pendulum Zone as floodgates. But this card is great to help us give us a draw too, because again, we really don't need the extra deck. We then play 3 copies of Time-Tearing Morganite. Time-Tearing Morganite is great in the deck as a 3-up because this card helps out so much in the build that basically during your normal draw phase, you get to draw 2 cards instead of 1, and you get an additional normal summon, which is absolutely broken, but you cannot activate monster effects in the hand, which is a little bit of a downside, but not too much in this build. This card is great in the deck to be able to use just to help us get that additional normal summon so we can swarm the board with our Amorphage monsters and get that extra draw every single turn so we can start swarming the board with our cards. We then play 3 copies of Ties of the Brethren. Ties of the Brethren is great in the deck as a 3-up to pay 2,000 life points, target one of our level 4 lower monsters, and then you get to special summon out 2 more monsters from your deck with the same type, attribute, and level as that monster, which is why you see so many of the level 4 monsters at 1 or 2 in the deck, because it's very easy to get them out on your side of the field with your copy of Ties of the Brethren, so you can swarm the board and go in for game. We then play 3 copies of Scapegoat. Scapegoat is great to be able to put a bunch of tokens out on our side of the field so we can basically just defend ourselves or for opponents trying to swing in for game, but we can also use these cards in the deck to be able to link summon, which is really nice, but it's great to be able to play Scapegoats in this build. This card is amazing in the deck to be able to just generate a bunch of tokens on your side of the field and basically give you a lot of protection, and it's just a great card overall in the deck. We then also play 3 copies of Amorphage Infection. Amorphage Infection is one of the most powerful cards in the entire deck, that all Amorphage monsters on the field gain 100 attack and defense for each Amorphage card on the field, and if a monster in your hand or you control is tributed or destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add an Amorphage card from your deck to your hand, which is a really cool ability to instantly get the exact card that you need. But this card is great in the deck as a 3-up, just to give us a boost of our monsters' attack points. So, that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing a few, starting off with Amorphage Lice. This card is really good as a 1-of in the deck, but you only need a single copy. Then all monsters on the field except Amorphage monsters lose 100 attack and defense for each Amorphage card on the field, which is a great effect to be able to combine with our copy of Infection to be able to get a big gap between our monsters and our opponent's monsters. Also, if a card in your Pendulum Zone is destroyed except during the damage step, you can actually place an Amorphage Pendulum monster from your deck in your Pendulum Zone, which is a pretty cool ability. We then play 2 copies of Pendulum Switch. Pendulum Switch is a great 2-of in the deck and a really powerful card overall in the deck that lets you target 1 card in your Pendulum Zone and special summon it, which is a really great ability to instantly bring up one of our Amorphage monsters like Sloth to our side of the field, which is such a powerful effect. This card also lets you target a Pendulum monster in your Monster Zone and place it in your Pendulum Zone, which is a great ability to basically just switch your monsters in and out. We then play 3 copies of an extremely spicy tech card that we're actually going to play face down and get you guys to play Guess That Card. So comment down below what you think this card actually is, and we're going to reveal it in 3, 2, 1. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, guys. Hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, because we're on the road to 100K subscribers and we're almost there. So every subscriber counts. So let's go ahead and check out and see what this really spicy tech card is. And it's actually going to be an extremely old school card called Solomon's Law Book. This card actually skips your own standby phase. You might be looking at this card and going, why would we want to skip our own standby phase? This card's completely useless. Well, it's actually not, because the reason you play this card is because all of your Amorphage monsters actually have the ability that once per turn during your standby phase, tribute a monster or destroy this card. And if you don't have a standby phase, you don't have to tribute. So you can basically throw 2 of your Amorphage monsters in the Pendulum Zone, activate Solomon's Law Book during your opponent's turn, skip your next standby phase, and you don't even have to tribute, which is absolutely crazy because you don't have a standby phase. I really like this card and always looked at this card to try and find a use for it, and finally found its home in Amorphage, because this card is a super old school card and just really cool to finally have a use for this card, and it's great in this deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, keep in mind this is an extravagance extra deck, so you're going to be playing a lot of 2-ofs and 3-ofs in the extra deck, so you really don't need the extra deck all that much, but these are the best options for you guys to be able to play in the extra deck. So we're going to start off with 2 copies of Bagooska, just in case you need to basically stall out a turn. This card is really good to be able to play in the deck to basically just make extremely easily in this build because we play so many level 4s. We then play 2 copies of Typhon. Typhon's just useful in any deck, which is why I play 2 copies in the build. This card is one of the most important cards in the entire extract because it's so easy to make this card. We then play 2 copies of Access Code just in case we can make it to pop multiple cards on the field and just go in for game. 2 copies of Nightmare Unicorn. Unicorn is just amazing in this build to spin cards off the field and helps out a lot overall in the deck. 2 copies of Phoenix. Phoenix is amazing in this build to be able to pop spells and traps on the field. 1 copy of Cerberus. Cerberus is great to pop monsters on the field, which is just amazing. And 2 copies of Mrs. Radiant. Mrs. Radiant is actually really good to be able to play as a 2-of in the deck. Almost play 3 copies of this card in the deck because of Scapegoat, because you can basically just make your copies of Scapegoat on your side of the field and link them away for 2 copies of Mrs. Radiant, giving us 1,000 extra attack points on top of any of our Amorphage monsters because they're all Earth, which is really cool to be able to make Mrs. Radiant on your side of the field. This card is actually one of the more important cards in the extra deck, and I actually consider playing 3 of this over a copy of Cerberus just so we can have basically that extra 1,000 points of attack points on our monsters. This card is actually really good. We then play 2 copies of IP Masquerena. IP could easily be SP if you have 2 copies of SP, and you could change out any of these cards in the extra deck for SP Little Knight if you want to play SP Little Knight in the extra deck. But again, this deck is totally fine without an extra deck. The only cards you really need is Typhon, Bagooska, and Mrs. Radiant to be able to play in the extra deck so you can get that 500 attack point boost for every copy of Mrs. Radiant, since we are playing Scapegoat in the deck. So we can link away 2 of the tokens to make this card, and the copies of Typhon are very easy to just normal summon out a monster and then make this card on your side of the field. And the Bagooska is just in case you basically need to throw it on your side of the field just to basically wait out a turn. Also, the Nightmare Phoenixes are great because they pop spells and traps, but the copies of Access Code, Unicorn, and IP are kind of okay in the extra deck. You don't have to play these cards if you don't have them, but they're still really good to be able to play in the deck as options to be able to play in this build. But again, you could play 3 copies of Mrs. Radiant if you want to play that instead. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. This deck is super fun. If you guys have never played Amorphage before, you should definitely give this deck a try. Hopefully, eventually we get more Amorphage support because this deck is really cool and I really like this deck a lot. And it's just really an insane deck that's actually just super fun to be able to play. So that's going to do for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.